Well, the movie theaters was Ada Mead, Ben Ally, Strand, Kentucky, and State Theaters. Me and Dee both worked for Kentucky Theater for a while. I was a usher, and I think Dee worked in the sessions selling popcorn. When I was 10 years old, I joined Ashland Avenue Baptist. Brother Clarence Walker baptized me there. And their mother and daddy were there, and then they moved their letter from there to Calvary Baptist. And when they moved their letter to Calvary Baptist, well, they wanted all of us kids to do the same thing, so I followed them there. And then when I went in service and came back, and Dee belonged to Grace Baptist, and I moved my membership there. Well, Bill was my oldest brother and worked for farming. He worked in farms and like hard out in farms. He didn't own none or nothing, just worked there. Tommy, he was one that would work any place, anytime, move anytime he wanted to. He was quite a character. He sang real good. He would go to Jolin Park and sing for the band that was out at Jolin Park. Well, it was Tommy and Bill, Tommy, and then I had a sister in between them that died young in life. Carl had a twin. Carl's twin died about just a few, maybe a day or two after they were born. And he's 18 months younger than me. Madeline was in between me and Tommy. Tommy was older than Madeline. And there were 7 of us kids. 2 of them died. 5 of us lived. Bill died at the age of 40. Segregation in Lexington was so bad that a black couldn't even walk in Ashland Park after dark, even if they worked there during the daytime. They'd have to, the people that they worked for would have to go get them. And it was awful hard on the blacks because even downtown, the water fountains were marked white and black. A black person couldn't drink out of a white person's water fountain. And this was in the courthouse. And if a black man walked past a white woman, he would get off of the sidewalk and get down in the street. He wouldn't even attempt to be there on this thing. The blacks did not ride on the streetcar. They had a marker that said black sit from here to rear, and when they got to the other end, they switched the train and took it back. They could pull that sign back to the other end, and that's the way they did. But everybody took it for granted. It didn't mean anything to us. It didn't mean anything to the blacks then. I went in service. The service was segregated. I was in charge of a black PX, post exchange, and you couldn't, the whites couldn't come to that black PX, no way. And the blacks in the service couldn't go in the white part of the service, over where the big PXs was for the whites. It was just segregated. But when I got out, it was all different. It had changed that much in 4 years. Well, I was like everybody else. I was in the Mid-Ally Theater on that Sunday afternoon, and when I came out, they were selling newspapers, extra, extra, extra. Pearl Harbor's been bombed, Pearl Harbor's been bombed. And didn't nobody know where Pearl Harbor was. I mean, it was something that nobody knew about. My daddy was a draftee officer, and he enlisted me and Carl both as a draftee in the service. And I was the first one called before Carl or Russell or any of the other boys. we went to Tampa, Florida, and I ended up there at an Air Force, in MacDill Field Air Force Base, and they had a boy there that was a sergeant that was in charge, like clerical work. And he said, hey, I see some of you boys are from Lexington. And he said, yeah. And he said, I'll tell you what, there's going to be some opening here in the Air Corps. If y'all want to volunteer for it, I'll put your names in for it. And I said, I always heard that you didn't want to volunteer or nothing in the Army. He said, well, this would be a good job. They had clerical sessions for 10 people. And I said, well, okay, we'll do it. And so we all signed up for it, and when they got down to the last two, me and another boy, I don't remember who he was, he said, well, they're all gone, but we've got openings in the post exchange, and we can get you that if you want it. It pays 50% of your base pay. So I started drawing as much as a corporal, and I was a private. No basic, no nothing, went right to work in the post exchange, and I was there for about 2.5 years. And I was transferred from the main post exchange and was given over to the black post exchange, in charge of it. And I had to run in with an officer there, and I got fired from that place and got sent to Lakeland Air Base as a guard for the bomb dump. And I told him if they kept me on that bomb dump guarding at night, I'd commit suicide. I wasn't going to do it. I was going to shoot myself. And he said, if anybody wants to be transferred that bad, buddy, you can go. And he sent me to AM school in Biloxi, Mississippi. And I went through about 16 weeks. It was about an 18-week course, and got drafted out of the Air Corps into the infantry. And from there I went to Camp House, Texas for 6 weeks advanced infantry training. And they didn't train none of us nothing because we was a bunch of hard-heads and already been in service over 2 years, and we didn't care what we did. All of us took a delaying route, and that was from Texas to the debarkation. And what we did was I stayed home 3 weeks, and that was I only had a week. That was late, but some of them stayed as much as 5 weeks. So they finally got the company all back together, and they give us OD clothes. That's wood, wool, and right in the middle of it, they changed it over to khakis, and they said, well, we're going someplace warm. So they transferred us to the Pacific. And I went from Maryland to Pittsburgh, California, which is a few miles from San Francisco. And we went underneath the Golden Gate Bridge on the ship. It took us 32 days to get from there to the Philippines. We went past Pearl Harbor, and we could see what a mess it was, but we didn't stop. We just went by there, and we went up through the Philippine Straits. After 32 days, we landed in Luzon Island, which is the main island of the Philippines. It's the largest one. And we pulled in there at Wall City, which was one of the biggest fighting they had in the Philippines. And I think it was 2 or 3 Congressional Medal of Honor in that place. And we went from there to La Prairie, which was the northern end of the island. And I was at the northern end of the island at La Prairie when they dropped the bomb on Japan. And that was, the helicopter flew over. We were on outpost. Wasn't nothing around us, no electric, no nothing. It was just a deserted island. And they flew over and told us about the bomb that they dropped on Japan, the first one. And that was where I got a Bronze Star from trying to save a guy in China Sea, which me and another boy tried to go out. We had been playing in bomb sites that hit the beach, and you'd get in them things and they'd take you under the water, and just like a current. And then I was already tired, and I don't know why I started out after the guy, but I got within touching distance of him, and he was so wild I steered that he drowned me. The other boy that went with me, he drowned, and this boy finally drowned, and I was in the water for 45 minutes, treading water. Finally got back to where they made, they put arms together and made a chain, and finally reached me. And the water was so rough in that, where the bombs hit that beach and tore it up, that you couldn't stand up. And it took me 2 days to recuperate in a field hospital. They didn't have no hospitals, they just had a tent. And I didn't even know they gave me a Bronze Star until I come home. They got it in the packet. It is on my report though. I was in 3 different companies because they transferred so many out at this time, the war, like the year being over. So some of them had already begun to get enough points that they could come home, and they kept moving us from company to company. In the Philippines, I started out as I carried a BAR, which is the big rifle, automatic rifle, not just a rifle, but the one that carried it. Yeah, I had to carry my own ammo, and I was the smallest guy in the outfit, and I carried it was almost like a machine gun, the BAR is. And what I would do, I would be back in the squad about 10 or 15, and then we would go into what they call different barrios, is where these Filipinos lived, and their huts, it's like little towns, and they call them barrios. And they would come to headquarters and tell them that there's Japs in their barrios, and we'd have to go in and clean these barrios out and get the Japs out of the barrios so these people can go back to their regular life. And if we come up on a thicket where they couldn't see nothing, they would call me up, and I'd have to set the rifle down on the ground on a tripod and spray the 150 yards ahead of us around a curve or something, so we could make sure there wasn't nobody there to clear the way. And we'd do that, and going up over the hill, up in the mountains, if you go around a curve, they would have holes dug back in the mountain, in the rocks, that they would have places that they could shoot out of. And if we caught them in there, they wouldn't come out. They'd take a flamethrower and stick a flamethrower in them holes and shoot fire in there. And they didn't come out then because they'd be on fire. And we just did that all the way up to La Prairie from the lowlands. I captured the first Japanese that was captured by my company on Luzon. And he had the flag that I brought home from service. I had his prayer book, his flag, and something else, and I turned him over to the Philippines because I didn't want to take him back. And